A girl boards a plane with a stranger, and 15 years later, she's met with surprise. As a mother, Zainab Sissay wanted what was best for her daughter, Maya Hughes. She wanted her to have a connection to her background and her heritage, so she took her to Sierra Leone, which is where she was born. But an emergency forced her to send her daughter back to the US immediately. 15 years later, the loving mom was finally able to track down the kind stranger who accompanied her daughter on the plane ride home. But why'd she go through all that trouble? Zainab Sissay was born in Sierra Leone, but moved to the United States when she was 11 years old. But she always felt a strong connection to the country she left behind all those years ago. Then, one day, she realized she couldn't ignore the urge to return to her homeland any longer. The only problem was things wouldn't go the way she expected when she brought her daughter on that trip with her. In 2003, Sissay decided to return to Sierra Leone, but leaving behind her life in the United States wasn't easy. She had tons of friends, an amazing career, and most importantly, a family. She was working at Northrop Grumman at the time and considered it the best job she ever had, but she was ready to give it all up, or so she thought. It was a very daring move, to say the least, Sissay told VOA. She wanted to go back home for plenty of reasons. Most importantly, she wanted to reunite with her grandmother, and she wanted her 5-year-old daughter, Maya Hughes, to meet her too. The trip was solely to take her back to learn of my heritage and my background, she explained. At that moment, Sissay wasn't sure if they'd ever return back to the United States. But things soon changed in the blink of an eye. Sissay and her daughter finally got on a plane and left their old lives behind. They had no plans to return to the US, but things didn't go as planned after they arrived at Sierra Leone. For starters, the transition was harder than she'd expected, as everything she knew about her home had changed. Sissay's daughter was young, and she had trouble adjusting to her new surroundings. But Sissay was having trouble adjusting too, because her country had changed so much since she'd left. They eventually started to feel at home, but 4 months later, something horrible happened. Sierra Leone had just recovered from a civil war, which made the girl's living situation really difficult. Then, one night, there was a fire in Sissay's daughter Maya Hughes' bedroom. Fortunately, the little girl was too young to remember much about that terrible moment. The fire was absolutely traumatizing. And then, unfortunately, Hughes had a medical emergency and needed to see a pediatrician immediately. That was the final straw for Sissay, who decided she needed to get her daughter out of the country as soon as possible. The only problem was Sissay couldn't take her daughter back to the US on such short notice. Sadly, she needed to let her young daughter fly home all by herself. As you probably know, most airlines don't allow children to travel without an adult. So at Lungi International Airport, Sissay asked complete strangers if they could take her daughter to the US with them. She asked people at the ticket counter, "Is anyone traveling to America? Can my daughter accompany you?" Everyone just made different excuses as to why they couldn't help. So Sissay desperately turned to the airline ticket taker for help. Sissay slipped the airline ticket lady something to get her to tell who was on the flight headed back to America. The agent pointed to Tom Perello, an American who was working as a lawyer in Sierra Leone. But when Sissay approached him to ask for an incredibly big favor, things didn't go the way she'd hoped. Perello told MSN about how he felt when Sissay had first approached him with her crazy request. Of course, my response was, no, and may I repeat, heck no. But when she persisted, he told her why he was so adamant about saying yes. Perello explained to Sissay that he had just lost his grandmother and wasn't in the right state of mind to accompany Hughes on the plane. But when she told him why her daughter needed to return to America, the man couldn't help but feel like he needed to help her. Perello and Hughes boarded the plane, but the trip wasn't direct. They made a stop in Côte d'Ivoire, a second stop in Brussels, Belgium. The little girl cried the entire time, but Perello didn't regret agreeing to help. In fact, he did everything he could to keep her calm. "I was just crying and crying, and he was trying to calm me down," Hughes told CBS News' Dana Jacobson. "He was singing to me on the plane. I remember that. He was singing in Creole." But at the time, she didn't realize how complicated the trip was for Perello. So this was a long and complicated journey that frankly had plenty of drama and complications along the way, Perello told CBS News. "It wasn't that I knew one song. It was just basically one verse over and over again for about an hour. And the good deed would end up costing him dearly." When the plane landed at Dulles Airport in Virginia, Perello returned the little girl with her grandmother. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make his connecting flight in time and ended up missing his grandmother's funeral. Fortunately, Cissé had better luck reuniting with her daughter. Cissé finally reunited with her daughter in America a month later, but they always wondered about the kind man who'd done them the biggest favor of their lives. They wanted to thank Perello, but it would be another 15 years before either of them got the chance. For 15 years, I felt like I've been looking for a ghost, a person that didn't exist, Cissé told CBS News. She didn't know the man's name, but in an unbelievable turn of events, she realized that her cousin worked with him, and after hearing the story of what happened, she learned Perello was the man that they'd been looking for. With the help of her cousin, Cissé was able to reach out to him by email, and it turned out that he remembered Cissé and her daughter, Hughes. He also remembered singing to the little girl in Creole to calm her down. Cissé and Hughes arranged a reunion with Perello in New York City, and they had a lot to catch up on. For starters, Perello had gotten into politics. He led the advocacy efforts on the Center for American Progress and was a congressman in Virginia. He was also a special envoy to the Obama administration. But there was something that was still haunting Cissé after all these years. Cissé learned that Perello had missed his grandmother's funeral because of the amazing favor he did for her daughter, Hughes. "I was so saddened," Cissé told VOA about his sacrifice. But Perello isn't holding a grudge. "One of the craziest experiences of my entire life is now a Twitter thread. I could not be happier to know you're shining bright," Perello told Hughes in response to her Twitter thread detailing her experiences as a child. "I think it's the start of something else. I want to call it closure, but it feels like a new beginning because I refound him," Hughes told CBS News. But she wasn't the only one who was grateful to him. "I can never thank him enough. No matter what I do from this point forward, it will never be enough for what he did," Cissé told CBS News. As far as Hughes is concerned, Perello did more than save the day. "I don't want to cry, but I'm really emotional about it because I feel like he saved my life. Because if he wouldn't stayed, I don't know where I would have been," Hughes told CBS News. She couldn't help but wonder if fate had put her in this kind man's path. "I think it was destiny because it could have been anybody and anything could have happened, and he brought me back here. So I don't think I can say thank you, really," she told CBS News. But Perello would do it all over again if he had the chance. You have lots of reasons to say no to something, and there are moments to say yes. And I'm really glad that I did in this case, as crazy as it was, Perello told CBS News. He might not have worn a cape or flown under his own power, but to Cissé and Hughes, he will always be a superhero.